Hello, hey everybody. Exciting to see you all again on this Monday, another Learn with Flo episode. Hopefully you guys can't hear it roaring here in the background, but I have my little space heater on my feet, so don't judge. It is feels like negative 30 outside, so we're doing what we have to do, right? So I'm excited to come at you guys today as we kind of officially continue to kick off the new year here, especially as we start to get into some of the up and coming health trends of 2024. I know that personally, I'm an avid learner. I'm always listening to different podcasts. I always want to hear different people's perspective, even if I disagree on their perspective, because I think it always helps me kind of see multiple different sides, multiple different angles. I'm a huge bookworm, so I'm always reading something. So as you guys will hear, if you've been following me a long time, you probably hear me referencing a lot of different books and resources and different podcasts. And I just think it's such an awesome world that we live in today with the information age of, if we know how to be a discerning consumer of said information, I think it can be such a valuable asset for us to be able to hear and learn so quickly as trends change and as we learn more information. Because I don't know if you guys have ever heard this statistic before, but I think it's just wild to me to hear that information that we learn from a research study standpoint, right? You think your classic randomized controlled studies, double-blind, peer-reviewed journal type studies, right, that make their way into med school literature and curriculum, all the way into standard daily practice. That whole process can take up to 20 years. 20 years. 20 years before we find something out, before our standard conventional medicine system is actually implementing that information. Way too slow. Way too slow for me, right? And I even remember when I was in grad school and studying all of this stuff, I had one professor who I worked with very closely, and she was, we always asked her, why don't we have books or textbooks? She's like, textbooks can't keep up. She's like, we're going to be studying and utilizing and referencing research that has just been published yesterday. She's like, you have to, in this industry, be willing to keep up, because that's the speed of how we're finding out more information about the human body, how we're customizing more information. And so if we're going to sit here and wait 20 years to say eventually it makes it into this curriculum, eventually those new students get taught that, eventually the existing practitioners are going to have continuing education courses offered to them, I'm way too slow. There are people struggling, there's people suffering, and we need to be at the forefront of a lot of that. And that's what I'm super passionate about. I'm a big giant nerd. I'm always learning and wanting to then give what I learned to my patients, to my clients, and to just the community of the lowdown that we're building here as well too. So soapbox aside, we're here to really talk about some of those health trends that I'm starting to see and identify coming out of 2023 and really ramping into 2024. I try to bring this into kind of some high level categories for us to talk through, because I think then inside each of these categories, there's going to be some details, right, that we can kind of dig in, double click on, and get more into the specifics around. But I think that's, like I said, one of my favorite things about working in healthcare is the endless opportunity for growth and learning, and to be on the forefront of some of the more up and coming things that are helpful. Not, like I said, I know we call them health trends, and I was honestly trying to think of a different word than call it trends, because to me, it's not something that goes in and out of style, like a trend, right? It's what is the direction that we see medicine and healthcare moving at the speed of light? What is the direction we're heading? And some of those kind of promising things that we want to keep on the horizon, not in terms of trends of oh, this is going to be in 2024 and out in 2025. Maybe as we learn more, but probably not. This is more just us and me showing you guys hey, this is the direction that healthcare is going. Get on board or kind of get left behind, right? And that's what I think is so helpful about this day and age, is to be able to stay on top of those new things that might feel new to someone else, but actually it's no, we've been practicing this with patients for years and decades now. Like, we know it works. We don't need to sit here and kind of like wait on our hands, right? So without further ado, I really just want to spend most of our time kind of diving into these 4 directions, or call it these 4 trends, really talk about like what's going to be in and what's going to be out in 2024, so that you guys can be kind of on the forefront of that. And like I said, I want you guys to feel kind of like the first ones with what I would consider like some insider secrets, and to feel empowered to really take back control of your health and your hormones, and really like understand how your body works, so that you can be a strong advocate for that, and your healthcare team as well too. So what's in 2024 and what's out in 2024, right? So the very first topic in conversation, kind of like I said, big high level, but number one, what I definitely see being out and from 2023, or even way earlier than that, is palliative care options, right? And what is in is more root cause curiosities. Let's explain, right? So when I talk about like what's in 2024, more and more people are honestly demanding root cause answers to their problems. And I say problems like it's something to be fixed, but root cause solutions to their symptoms that they're experiencing. And they want to know the why. They want to know how things are connected together. They want to know, like, how did this ever manifest in my life? How can I prevent it from manifesting again in the future? So we're seeing more and more people kind of waking up to the idea of demanding more of these root cause answers and solutions, and less people that are okay with what I would consider palliative care, right? And even though the word like palliative, if you look it up from its like origin and definition, it actually comes from a Latin derivative meaning to cloak, right? To cloak or to cover something, right? So I'm like, oh, well, if that is not fitting of kind of more of the conventional or traditional medicine model that a lot of people have been getting so freaking frustrated by, is like, that's really what they offer, right? They've been offering more of just like, oh, you say you have this symptom, well, I can give you this pharmaceutical. And it's like, okay, cool. So the symptom goes away, but like, why? And they're like, well, I don't know why you have it, but I can get rid of the symptom. It's like, well, is that symptom a sign of something bigger that I should be aware of? And they're like, I don't know, but I can get rid of the symptom for you. It's like mind-boggling to me, right? It's like that symptom is communicating to the body for a reason. And if we just try to like put a Band-Aid on that symptom, it's just going to pop up again somewhere else as a different symptom. And then we're going to be back the next year and you're going to give me a prescription for that. And then I'm going to be back the next year and you're going to give me a prescription for that, because it's all similar symptoms of the same root cause problem. It's just popping up in just different symptoms across the board, right? So we're playing like this cover up to cloak this like palliative care medicine with a lot of our symptoms, instead of really treating it from like a root cause approach, right? So a lot of this, like I said, conventional medicine system, a lot of people are not wanting just palliative care options anymore, whether that's pharmaceuticals for symptom management, or they're kind of demanding, like I said, care options that aren't just like dictated by insurance. It's kind of a messy thing. I'll try not to get on a soapbox about it, but that's one of the big pieces of like why some people get so frustrated with more of like the palliative care or traditional medicine options, is because those practitioners are handcuffed by insurance, right? The insurance company dictates what they can and cannot order for testing. The insurance company dictates what they can and cannot prescribe based off of your coverage. It's not about what's best, right? That practitioner might be sitting there and be like, man, I'd really love to run this test on this person. I really know that I need to see these markers. I'd love to be able to prescribe them this or recommend them that, but that's not covered by insurance, so I have to give them this instead. It's like, what in the world? I'm like, so you're not really getting like an unbiased approach to that, because they're handcuffed by insurance and they're more in that just like symptom management kind of model, right? Which is no different when you walk in and like conventional medicine also gives us that mentality of like, oh, well, just lose weight and your problems go away. It's like, no, the weight that I'm experiencing is a symptom of a bigger root cause issue, right? So to tell somebody like lose weight and your symptoms go away, it's like, no, what needs to happen is I need to work on my overall root cause health, and the weight takes care of itself, right? Losing weight does not make someone healthier. Full stop. Like that's one of the biggest red flags, is just like, well, just lose weight. It's like, no, I'm coming to you because I'm struggling with that. Like this is obviously a symptom of something bigger, right? So that whole like, oh, just lose weight to be healthy. I'm like, that is so ass backwards. I'm like, we get healthier in order to lose weight. I don't know where that whole, like I said, that's a cover up. That's kind of like a palliative care kind of option. I think a lot of times, like just what we're seeing overall is like the more and more kind of those scientific advancements that we get, we're getting farther and farther away from our roots, right? And so what a lot of people are starting to kind of wake up around heading into 2024 is like, yeah, I don't just want these like pharmaceuticals to cover this up. I don't just want like 50 different laser session treatments. Like, I don't just want these topicals for my skin. Like, what's going on? Like, what is at the root of a lot of these things that I cannot just continuously, I don't know, come back for more and more because it didn't fix the problem, right? So it's getting us farther and farther away from our roots. It's also kind of giving us this vibe where people are, this is totally, like I said, kind of out in 2024. We're starting to see more and more people that aren't just content with outsourcing their health to someone else, right? I think it kind of changes with generations too, but I've definitely seen this with just some generational shifts and generational changes of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's not, like I said, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but like individuals going to their healthcare practitioners and it's like what they say is God, right? And it's like, okay, you went to one practitioner, you got their opinion on the matter. You don't have to do that. You do recognize that, right? And they're like, oh, well, my doctor said that, I have to go on a statin. I'm like, you don't have to do anything. Like, where did that come from that like, oh, they dictate my choices? I'm like, oh no, like you're not outsourcing your health to like someone else. Like this is an inside job. This is a you thing. Like you can decide, you can take that recommendation and be like, oh yeah, I do want more of those palliative care options right now. It's just a season of my life where, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and take the prescription medication. And I know it's not fixing the root problem, but I'll just cross that bridge when I get there. You do you, boo, that's fine, right? As long as you know that though, like, is that being discussed with you? That's my issue with it, right? Is like, okay, are we discussing like, hey, I could give this prescription to you, but what we're seeing as a general trend is probably a bigger picture, what's going on underneath the surface. Are you in a state of your life where you want to kind of look at the root cause here? Or are you at a season of your life where you are wanting just like a little bit of a cover up, a little bit of a palliative strategy for now, right? Have that conversation with everybody and let them decide and kind of choose, and not just, like I said, outsource their health to someone entirely, right? So I think we're starting to see that this is like just a general trend. I just gave you guys like essentially 5 different examples, right, of where we start to see people being like, yeah, no, I'm not here for that more like palliative cover up to cloak my symptoms type strategy. I'm here because like, I want to know why, and I want to know how to reverse it. And I want to know how to make sure that this isn't something that's an ongoing problem for myself. So as, like I said, that first trend or direction that I think we see in 2024, we're seeing more and more people waking up to kind of the sick care system that we've developed, and more people that are demanding like root cause medicine, right? So they don't just like want topicals for their skin. They want to know why they have acne, right? They want to dig into the root causes of gut dysbiosis. They want to dig into the root causes of liver stagnation and liver detoxification pathways, right? It's like, yes, I am here for that, right? Or maybe individuals aren't just settling anymore like, oh, you just have IBS and like you just have to eat the super restrictive bland diet for the rest of your life. And they're like, I'm not buying that, right? It's like they want to know why they have the symptoms. And it's like, yes, probably because we have some poor digestive capacity. We probably have some low stomach acid. We probably have low bile production. We may have some infections or some toxicities in that system too. Like, it doesn't just have to be like, oh, here's the label. This is just what you live with for the rest of your life, right? Or maybe someone that's like, they don't want just birth control anymore. They want to know, like, why do I have PCOS? Why am I struggling with endometriosis? Why do I have PMS type symptoms, right? And then they get that opportunity to really discuss, like, do I just want a cover up strategy that I'm going to have to deal with at some point in time? Or do I want to really dig into that now in this season of life, right? So that's kind of like overarching trend number one that I'm definitely seeing in 2024. I'll be anxious to see if you guys agree with that, if you're kind of seeing more of that as well too, of individuals that are demanding more of the root cause answers and not settling as much for like the palliative cover-up options. Pretty cool. Trend number two, kind of, like I said, alluded to this already, but more specifically, I think what is out in 2023 is more of the emphasis on weight loss, and what is in 2024 is the emphasis on muscle mass, right? So every freaking year, goes without fail, diet culture in some way, shape, or form tries to sell us just a different way to spin eat less, move more, and get us so hyper focused on this calories conversation, right? Whether it's Weight Watchers and count points, or intermittent fasting and skip breakfast, or in 2023, it was the year of appetite suppressants. Here, take this medication. You won't even be hungry, right? AKA all of our like GLP-1 agonist type of medications, right? So every year, guys, like just learn, like every year, they're not coming up with anything new, novel, or different, right? They recognize that the same stuff that they're doing every year doesn't work. They just hope that they change it just enough that it looks different than what you've done before. And it's like, ooh, something new and shiny. I'm like, guys, it's not something new and shiny. It's just a different color lipstick on the same exact pig. It's the same exact thing, right? They're just spinning it in some sort of different way so that we as consumers buy into their billion-dollar diet culture industry, right? But what we're starting, I think, to get smart about is, and finally catching on, is that losing weight, like just being lighter on a scale, does not infer or make anybody healthier, right? We're seeing tons of individuals that have like a normal BMI or a normal weight and they're pre-diabetic. I'm like, that's a problem, right? So it's not just about like being lighter, it's about maintaining muscle. And specifically, if we want to shrink ourselves or make ourselves smaller, it's the emphasis on like, girl, you better be doing everything that you can to maintain and or build muscle, and just focus on more of the body fat loss, right? And it's like, oh, okay, so out are the days of just like using the scale. Oh my gosh, I lost 10 pounds in 10 days. Now it's like, oh, I lost 10 pounds in 10 days, but 8 of it was muscle and 2 of it was water. We're not celebrating that anymore. Like, I'm just downright worried. Right? And I think this kind of came to light too. If anybody, I've been getting tons of questions about this, so it's kind of forefront of my mind. But anybody that watched like the recent Netflix documentary series, I think it's called You Are What You Eat, and they talked about the Stanford twin study, where they studied like the vegan diet versus an omnivore diet. I'm not going to get into it right now. The whole study was funded by Beyond Meat, so enough said, like follow the money. But the one thing that I thought was like super alarming was that like certain individuals following this vegan diet, like this one postmenopausal female following the vegan diet lost 8 pounds in 8 weeks. Normally someone would be like, oh my gosh, you're killing it, girl. 6.5 of those pounds were muscle. I about died. I was like, that's awful. I was like, we cannot celebrate that. Like, that's alarming. Do you know how long it is going to take for a postmenopausal female to put back on 6.5 pounds of muscle? I'm like, she's lighter, but she's fatter. how did we benefit that individual at all by doing that, right? But then secretly behind the scenes, like, oh, you lost 8 pounds, like pat on the back. I'm like, oh, hell no, like not here for that anymore. We're not celebrating like muscle loss just because you're lighter on the scale. Like, heck no. So I think we're starting to see phrases like strong is the new skinny. You start to feel and see more prominent like practitioners like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She has been one. She actually just released her book. It's called Forever Strong. If you haven't read it, it's a good one. She has her own podcast and stuff like that too. But Gabrielle Lyon runs a whole clinic that she calls muscle-centric medicine. Right. And so she is out there like gallivanting the world, really putting at the forefront of focus like muscle. Whereas like conventional medicine and diet culture just makes us feel like, oh, just lose weight and all your problems go away. I'm like, I guarantee by losing weight does not inherently make somebody healthier by any way, shape, or form, or put them in like a better position in life, right? Muscle, we know, is the organ of longevity. We know that we have a decreased risk of blood sugar imbalances. We have a decreased risk of prediabetes or diabetes. We have a decreased fall risk or fracture risk, which to me is huge, right? It's like we're not thinking enough about muscle, and we're okay like being frail or like skinny fat as we're going through this aging process. I'm like, oh, heck no. Like if you are under muscled, that to me is way more alarming than you being like overweight or having a high BMI score. Like we need to treat this muscle for sure. So I think people are getting wise to the importance of like increasing their metabolism, not just sitting there and like decreasing their calories. Right? So the emphasis has really started to shift towards protein, and not just like protein from protein shakes. We realize that's not the same thing. Like we're talking about nutrient dense, chewable animal sources of protein. We're not worried about, like I said, it's about protein, not about counting calories. It's about the emphasis on strength training, not just like burning calories doing cardio. It's like you don't build or maintain muscle by starving yourself, by skipping meals, by fasting, or by running your butt off. Like all of those things are very like weight loss minded, and I don't think they've done us any services in all of the decades that we continue to try to use that same formula over and over again with just a different picture on it. It's like, guys, it's not working. Stop trying to make it work. Right? So I think, like I said, trend number 2, direction number 2 that we're definitely going to see from 2023 to 2024 is the emphasis on muscle and not just weight loss. Love this for us. Number 3, taking a little bit different direction, I think one of the big trends that we'll start to see is leveraging and understanding epigenetics versus sitting here and blaming our genetics, right? I know this will be a little bit of a hot button topic, but you know me, I don't ever steer away from a hot button topic because I love it. And what we're starting to see, like I said, is just helping individuals understand that genetics is the actual DNA material that we were born with, right? But epigenetics are going to be all of the factors in our nutrition, internal, external environment that act upon that genetic material to decide whether or not it's turned on, turned off, whether it's even ever actually active, right? So epigenetics is the expression of that genetic material. So we always kind of hear and describe it as like genetics loads the gun, but it's the environment that pulls the trigger, right? And I think a lot of times what has previously kind of been toted to us is this concept that like, oh, well, I was just born with it. Oh, my whole family is that way, so I am too. It's like, no, like there was probably, yes, some genetic material that was handed down, but there probably was a lot of similar environmental factors and maybe nutritional habits or lifestyle habits and behavior patterns and beliefs or nervous system regulation trauma that was probably passed down. That's more of a factor than the actual genetic material you were born with, right? So I think ultimately, like I said, conventional medicine has kind of falsely led us to believe that we're like helpless against our genetics and like, oh, my cholesterol is high because it runs in my family, or I'll probably be diabetic because my whole family is, or breast cancer just runs in my family. All the females on my mom's side have it, or like my favorite one is obesity is a disease that's based off of genetics. I'm like, yeah, all of those that I just named off definitely have some basis in different genetic material that's passed down, but I really feel strongly about the fact that we're starting to see this new wave of medicine into 2024, helping people understand the nuance of this genetic conversation, and more so educating that like this, that doesn't make it a path of reality for you. Right? In fact, there's so many things that we can do to start to understand, like, yes, the genetic material we were born with, but that should just make us curious about, okay, then what nutritional factors should I be considering? What gut health factors should I be considering? What lifestyle, environmental stress management factors should I be considering my epigenetics? Not just like, oh, here's your genetics, just sit there and roll over. It's like, no, here's your genetics, here's what to do about it. That's what I think we're going to start to really see and understand in the new wave of medicine in 2024. So instead of just saying like, oh, cholesterol is high, it runs in my family. It's like, I wonder why that's always run high in my family. Do I need some additional methylation support? What does my sulfation pathways look like? Like, that's a big part of controlling that family history picture, right? Or maybe we need to think about opening up and supporting your drainage and detox pathways. Maybe we need to correct the gut microbiome and or toxin burden. Maybe we need to break generational food habits. Like, that's what these kind of like genetic conversations are inviting us to do. They're not inviting us to just like roll over and lay there and be like, well, I'm just destined for it, right? It's like, no, you have certain genetics and now you're presented with the opportunity to make sure that the next generation doesn't have that same genetics. You either pass on the same genetic material, but you're teaching them how to navigate it, right? It's like, hey, we tend to be born into a family that has a lot of blood sugar regulation issues, and so this is how we choose to fuel ourselves because we know that we have that. Or I have this genetic predisposition, so I need to be somebody that's really careful about navigating and making sure I have enough muscle tissue because that improves my metabolic flexibility and my blood sugars are a lot more stable. Those are the types of conversations that I hope are kind of that new wave medicine that we're continuing to see in 2024. So blaming our genetics is out in 2023, but leveraging epigenetics totally in, right? Last one that I'll leave you guys with here today is really embracing and seeing this move and this direction towards mind-body medicine and leaving behind the separate systems, right? The piecing the body apart into totally different systems and not bringing the body together and treating it as a whole. So what I mean by this is we have one physical appearance, right? But even within our physical appearance, we have 4 different bodies within us. We have our physical body. We also have our emotional body. We have an energetic body, and we have our spiritual body. Right? So we have 4 bodies in one. And conventional medicine has really kind of separated all of those, right? You see it with like, all of the different specialties, right? It's like, oh, I have my endocrinologist over here that just does my thyroid hormones. And then I have my OBGYN that just talks about my lady parts. And then I have my therapist or my psychiatrist that just talks about like my mental health. And then it's like, whoa, we have 15 different doctors managing one physical appearance. And it's like, what's the common root of a lot of this, right? And so a lot of times, like what we are starting to see in like the future wave of practitioners that truly are in this for a passion, right? They're eager learners. They want to share that with other people. What we're starting to see is practitioners that are understanding and respecting and treating all of the bodies together, right? Doesn't mean that they are experts at everything, right? I definitely have individuals that I outsource to for like the spiritual body or the energetic body. Like we can discuss and talk about the role of those and how they might be playing into someone's like physical, emotional, and energetic body, but we might need some specific tools to be able to target that body that are outside of our container, right? But at least we're talking about it, and I'm bringing it up, and I'm like, I'm not going to just keep beating your physical body to death without us also crossing this bridge of like, I think there's some, underlying pieces of the puzzle here that are impacting your physical body, right? And so what I mean by this is I think we're going to start to see more practitioners that are educating patients on how their past and current stress or trauma is playing into their current physical health symptoms. I talk about it all the time. We have to toe the line slowly, right? But there's a lot of times where different stress, different trauma is actually manifesting as physical symptoms in somebody's body. And it's like, I could sit here and treat your gut microbiome all day long, but if we're just going to not talk about this elephant in the room, then what are we really doing? Like, I want to talk about this elephant in the room while we work on your gut microbiome, because I think these both are one and the same, right? That's what we're going to start to see. Or educating patients to see in the reverse too, how maybe their current or past physical health condition is actually impacting their mental health, right? All of the time, I'm helping people kind of even connect the dots. Sometimes they're like, oh, so what I'm eating, when I'm eating, how I'm eating, like that's what's fueling and creating my anxiety. I'm like, yep. Right? So how often we're missing treating the physical body when we're trying to separate and just treat the mental body, right? It's like I have anxiety, or I have panic attacks, or I have gut issues. I'm like, yeah, but did you know that like gut issues and anxiety can go hand in hand? Did you know that people that are undernourished or chronic dieters have a 70% coexistence rate with gut issues as well too, like IBS type diagnoses? I'm like, so we're just going to sit here and pretend that like those two things don't impact each other? I'm like, I choose no. Like, we're going to treat all of the bodies together. We want to understand the impact that tinkering in one part of the body has throughout the entire body too. So I think many people are starting to wake up to the importance of working with like trauma-informed practitioners and working with practitioners that understand how to address like the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, and put that treatment plan together so it's all encompassing, and we're not just trying to treat the physical body and ignore the rest, because nobody gets very far with that. It gets frustrating. You feel like you're spinning your wheels, wasting your time. I feel like we're spinning our wheels, wasting our time, because we're not coexisting all of those bodies together. So that's my jam. That's why I sometimes call what I do woo-woo medicine, because sometimes people come in talking about gut issues and they leave talking about their stress levels. I'm like, yep, that's because I had to go there, because it was definitely part of this equation, right? So just understand that, like I said, as you're navigating these realms in 2023, or coming out of 2023 and going into 2024, I'll be anxious to see what you guys see as some of the upcoming trends. I know that's what I'm seeing as a practitioner. That's what I hope for the continued field. And like I said, if you guys have any other trends that you're either, like I said, kind of curious about, or you've heard on the horizon and you want us to dive into it here in a Learn with Flo episode, drop them in the comments below. Always taking ideas. Otherwise, have an awesome rest of your Monday, and now be on the lookout for maybe some of those trends showing up in some of the avenues that you're exploring for yourself as well too.